You know the old saying, it's always the ones you most expect? I don't think that's the saying, but that's the way I say it. The people who spend years screaming everybody else is cheating are often the ones who end up having the problem themselves. Now, I'm talking about voter fraud. For years, Republicans have insisted we have a major voter fraud problem in the United States. We need investigations and special prosecutors and task forces and tip lines and forensic analyses of whether there are barbecue stains on ballots and certainly prosecutions and all of this stuff. We finally found somebody worth investigating. The problem is he's one of the people leading the investigations. I'm talking about Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who's currently the Republican nominee to be senator representing Texas. He has built a lot of his career on, I will crack down on voter fraud that we never had evidence for. And now it seems as though he has violated Texas election law. And it's a perfect irony. Back in February, Paxton said, we have a voter fraud tip line, and my office is going to stop at nothing to uncover illegal voting. And he even published guidance reminding Texans, you have to register to vote at the address where you really live. Remember, it's illegal if you misrepresent your residence on voter registration records. Now, fast forward a few months, and there's an investigation by ProPublica and by the Texas Tribune. And it turns out that Paxton has voted in 6 elections using the address of the home he shared with his now estranged wife, even though, according to court filings, he moved out years ago. Investigators also linked him to another home in a completely different county where the evidence points to him actually living. Now, let's not take this out of context. I think it's important to understand how voter registration works because Republicans love to mislead people with this stuff. I want to be sort of forthright about it. I've said before, I'm pretty sure I've been registered in 2 places before. And the reason was when I lived in a place, I registered, and then I moved and I registered at my new address. I didn't deregister at the old one. Eventually, the system catches up. But there was a period where I'm sure I was registered in both places. Tiffany Trump, Trump's daughter, same thing happened. She moved. She was registered in both places. States don't always communicate perfectly. Records don't always line up, whatever. That is not voter fraud. The question is, did I vote twice? As long as you vote once where you correctly currently live, the fact that I'm registered at the old address doesn't really make a difference. That's the law. Now, Republicans have spent years waving around these statistics of people registered in multiple places as if that proves that anybody's committing fraud. That is not against the law. What you have to do is vote where you really live. And there's usually ordinary explanations for a lot of this stuff. That's why election experts keep finding that intentional voter fraud is really rare. The Paxton story is different because this isn't an old registration that didn't get cleaned up. The allegation is he moved from an address where multiple election lawyers believe he was no longer legally residing, and he was still voting under that address. Now, he has not been charged with a crime. He's not going to. His campaign is like, this is false reporting. It's politically motivated reporting. Politically motivated can still be true, but they're saying it's false and politically motivated. And lawyers are kind of muddying it up by going, oh, residency cases are very complicated. If someone temporarily leaves but intends to return, you can keep voting out of that address. Maybe Paxton thought he would reconcile with his wife or whatever. Intent does matter in these situations. But unlike a lot of Republican politicians, I think that nuance also matters. Let's not pretend that a voter registration issue is criminal the way Republicans love to do when they try to pin it on Democrats. Paperwork issues aren't fraud. They might be, but they don't have to be. And not every administrative mistake means an election was stolen. I've been saying that for years. They are huge hypocrites. But then let's take it a step further. Paxton isn't a random voter. He's the Attorney General of Texas. He's the chief law enforcement prosecuting, the chief law enforcement office, I guess you would say, prosecuting election fraud. And he says to Texans, we have zero tolerance here. for people violating election laws. And he created the tip line. And now the election law experts are saying the laws should apply to him. And he seems to have done something that is not allowed. Now, my view is investigate everything, prosecute when appropriate, and then punish appropriately if people are guilty. But when you have Paxton under scrutiny, you know that that's not the conversation. Suddenly, nuance, intent, complicated, shades of gray, and they're kind of right, but they need to apply it all the time instead of going, Democrats are out there, dead people are voting. Well, are they? Or did some people correctly submit an absentee ballot and then die by election day, or simply die at some point later? And they're going back and going, they're dead. Well, they're dead now. Were they dead then? Years pretending that none of that detail matters, accusing everyone and never looking at themselves. So I don't think the lesson here is really about Paxton. I think the lesson is a lot of the people spending the time insisting fraud is everywhere should just make sure they're following the rules themselves. Big surprise, Ken Paxton is not. Thanks for watching. Check out this other video. And if you like our content, make sure to subscribe so YouTube puts our videos in your feed, and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple.